I felt weird watching it. Like I felt like I felt dirty watching it.
Yeah.
And it also made me feel uncomfortable. That's why it kind of makes me question why it was ever made in the first place.
Welcome, everybody. You're watching Don't Get So Emotional podcast. I'm joined by Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Paul.
Now, we're going to be talking about The Reckoning, the new BBC drama about Jimmy Savile. I've watched all 4 episodes. Did you binge it, or did you watch it over the 4 nights?
Pretty much binged it. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about our thoughts about the film. We're going to look at some of the criticisms behind the film. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Jimmy Savile as well. So for anyone that doesn't know, Jimmy Savile is probably Britain's most prolific predatory sex offender. He was awarded an OBE, he was knighted, he was a celebrity, had TV shows, radio shows. And yeah, he was basically in plain sight doing all this stuff, and the program shines a light on that, and it was quite disturbing to watch, actually. What did you think?
I actually really liked it, but I felt weird watching it. Like I felt dirty watching it. And it also made me feel uncomfortable because there were times where I found him funny and I almost vouched for him. Do you know what I mean? I was rooting for him a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is just mad, but that's why it kind of makes me question why it was ever made in the first place. It makes me think, should this have even been made? Because of the very reasons I just said, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I've done a little bit of research into Jimmy's career. So his early life, he started off as a coal miner, and that was cut short by injury. And then he managed dance halls and was even a professional wrestler. Did you know that? His radio career started in Radio Luxembourg in 1958, and then he started his TV career on Tyne Tees in 1960. But I think he was most well known for Top of the Pops. So he started on Top of the Pops, and as well as the radio shows, he then presented Jim Will Fix It. And wasn't
he known for inventing the whole concept of using 2 sort of record players at the same time?
Apparently, yeah. I saw a Joe Rogan podcast, and Jimmy Carr said he invented the mixer between 2 decks.
And he does make that. Doesn't he make that claim in the series as well? I swear there's something like that in the series.
Yeah.
Well,
I've only watched it. Maybe I should watch it twice before doing this episode. But so. Yeah, Jim Will Fix It was. I mean, I remember Jim Will Fix It because I'm a kid of the 70s. You're a bit younger than me, but did you watch Jim Will Fix It?
No. So I only ever knew him as this weirdo that appeared one year on Big Brother. I mean, obviously I'd heard of him, and my parents and whatever had told me about him, and whenever I'd see him on TV, because
you didn't know anything about Jim Will Fix It or any of that stuff.
I don't.
I will go for it. So, I mean, basically in the 70s, he was well known for Top of the Pops, which you would have missed. And Jim Will Fix It, he was very well known for. He also did a number of sort of commercials. He did commercials for the railways. He also did a campaign for the road safety called Clunk Click. And then he had a show on BBC called Clunk Click as well. But yeah, so you obviously missed all that stuff. You came into it as this weirdo on Big Brother.
It's a champ. Wait, the champ. I have to see how big you are. Excuse me. I want you to know that I have a violent temper, but you have nothing to fear from me.
Pretty much. I mean, prior to him, it being discovered what he did, I didn't really know much about him, and I certainly didn't know how well respected he was, and the power he had, and the people that he kind of mingled with, even Prince Charles and people like that. He had a lot of power, and I didn't know any of that.
Prince Charles, Margaret Thatcher, who was probably behind him getting knighted, and also the Pope. He also met the Pope.
Yes, the Pope. There's a famous picture, isn't there?
He did a lot of charity work for Stoke Mandeville and Broadmoor. Now, do you know how much he raised for charity?
10 million,
40 million.
40 million.
40
Oh,
million
okay.
pounds. So I think that's part of the, I'm not going to say appeal, part of his hold was that he is Jimmy, he does all this work for charity, and he could play on that to people if they ever wanted to say, look, we don't like what you're doing or any of that stuff. He could say, look, I'm Jimmy, do you want me to stop doing? I mean, that's probably part of it, I think. But we're here to talk about the show, right? So when I heard Steve Coogan was going to play Savile, I'm a big fan of Steve Coogan's acting, okay, but I'm not a fan of Alan Partridge. And I
Oh, no,
thought,
I'm not into his. Yeah, I'm not into his comedy stuff.
and
but
I
know that
thought
he's-
maybe he would be doing it as kind of like a. I didn't know what to expect, but when I saw how he portrayed Savile, it was uncanny, the resemblance. And there's bits where it uses stock footage from the 70s, and it's seamless, isn't it? Sometimes you have to think, hang on, was that
Yeah,
him?
no, it's for me. I forgot that I was watching Steve Coogan play him, and it just felt like I was watching him at times. Like the way he spoke, everything was like the mannerisms, everything down the wit, the humor, everything was on point. And for me, it wasn't so much that it was seamless when they showed pictures of the real Jimmy Savile or clips of the real Jimmy Savile. For me, it was like a quick reminder. Oh yeah, this isn't this isn't real. This isn't really him. That's the real guy. But
the thing
yeah,
is,
Steve,
you talk about his comedy, right? His comedy consists of a number of small catchphrases and his cigar and his funny clothes. That's it, right? So the catchphrases were, how's about that then? Guys and gals, now then, goodness gracious, and as it happens, right?
didn't he go, aha?
No, he didn't. That's Alan Partridge. So
Okay.
you're getting confused. What are you on about? Anyway, so didn't he go, aha? Anyway, that's going in. I'm not cutting that out. So, you know, as well as having these funny catchphrases, I mean, Tony Blackburn appeared and said that people didn't like him. Other DJs didn't like him. And I thought he was just a bit of an eccentric, a bit odd. But there was something more to it. So he was actually a member of Mensa. Okay. So this guy was very intelligent. And I think he'd worked out that if he could get the mainstream to support him, it would allow him to go virtually undiscovered. Because I'll try and find the footage. I've got footage of the police interview.
Okay, this interview is being tape recorded. What's your full name?
James Wilson Savile.
You said earlier it was okay to call you Jimmy.
That's my name, yes.
So, just before I make you aware of what's been alleged, I'll just read out the caution. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely upon in court, and anything you do say may be given in evidence.
I'll say everything. I've had so much of this in 50 years, you know, it's always either someone looking for a few quid or a story for the paper.
What we'll do, Jimmy, I'm not being rude stopping you there. I will give you a chance to say, but it's just important that I get this introduction bit done.
You didn't interrupt me.
Did you specifically go to Duncroft knowing it was an all-girls place to receive sexual gratification?
That is a complete flight of fantasy. I have now alerted my legal team that we may be doing business. See, I'm known in the trade as litigious. Pull people into court straight away, no messing. Oh dear, I've been wronged, your worship. Wronged. Oh, dreadful. 200 grand. 5 times I've done that. I'd rather not. If this disappears, it disappears. If it doesn't disappear, then you, young lady, will finish up at the Old Bailey as well as everyone else.
He basically he managed to get away with, even when he was being investigated, he managed to just say, my lawyers will come in and, you know.
I mean, I remember watching the Louis Theroux documentary, and I remember, since all this has happened, there's a lot of stuff that I've watched. There's lots of documentaries. There's the Louis Theroux documentary that he did, when was it? In the noughties at some point, but it was a while ago, and obviously it seemed like Louis was kind of alluding to, people kind of knowing what was going on, and maybe even trying to get some sort of admission or confession out of him. I think that might be who that journalist was loosely based on in the actual.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's not.
No, it's not. I thought that when I watched it, I thought it was kind of like a kind of homage to Louis Theroux. It wasn't at all. Louis Theroux doesn't appear in the drama at all. It's actually based on his biographer who released a book, In Plain Sight: The Life and Lives of Jimmy Savile by Dan Davies. So I'm trying to get hold of a copy of the book. It's actually very hard to get. I went into Waterstones today. I went to Amazon. It was, available, but for a couple of weeks because I wanted to read it prior to doing this thing. But I'm just doing it out of interest. But yeah, that's what it's based on.
But just going back to what I was saying. So, like I said, I didn't know much about it before, but after I've watched a lot of stuff, and including this, new series, and it seemed to me like he was trying to get as much. The more power he got, the higher the position he held, the more, whatever he got, the more untouchable he became, and he was well aware of that. So, getting promotions, getting new shows, his fame, kind of getting more and more fame. Mingling with people like Margaret Thatcher, even, was desperate to get the knighthood. He knew that all of this would make him more and more untouchable and allow him to get away with what he was doing. But there was also that element of he felt like he could balance out his sort of bad behavior with good behavior and charity work and whatnot. I think he desperately wanted to try and balance it out. And, I remember watching on the Louis Theroux that there was a big kind of element of that where it felt like he needed to kind of, make up for the fact.
When Louis asked him if he was a paedophile, he said, "I might be or I might not be. I'm the only one that knows." And it was kind of like, that's not the answer you would give. The answer you would give is no. Of course, I'm not.
Yeah, I know, but he wanted people to know in a way. Like it's like he kept putting out hints. Like that's why a lot of his humor would be in plain sight.
Yeah, because he said that he was feared in every girls' school in the country. He said that in numerous places. He said it on Through the Keyhole. He said it on Have I Got News for You?
He also said things like, and this is to people that, I don't know, children, 8 years old, let's say. I remember him having a phone call with like an 8-year-old, and he said something like, "Oh, can I have a hug or something?" And he went, "Oh, I don't know about giving a hug to little boys, but if you've got a sister, stuff like that." And it was always seedy. It was never innocent. Like it always had this kind of seedy undertone.
Undercurrent of something dodge.
Yeah.
Do you know there's only one person that I'm aware of that actually, a celebrity, that actually spoke out about Jimmy Savile. Do you know who that was?
In 1978, at the height of the Sex Pistols explosion, there you are saying about Jimmy Savile.
On film, I'd like to kill Jimmy Savile. I think he's a hypocrite.
Weren't I right?
I bet he's into all kinds of seediness that we all know about, but are not allowed to talk about. I know some rumours. I bet none of this will be allowed out.
I should imagine libelous stuff will be allowed out.
Nothing I said is liable.
But I'm very, very bitter that the likes of Savile and the rest of them were allowed to continue.
Did you ever try and do anything about Savile?
I did my bit. I said what I had to.
Did they air that? No. It just got suppressed.
Yeah.
For legal reasons.
Yeah. And
did you meet?
I found myself being banned from BBC Radio there for quite a while.
So John Lydon appeared on Piers Morgan and actually discussed it. But let's talk about the critical reception. I don't know if you've seen the reviews. So one of the reviewers on The Guardian said it was chillingly brilliant, obviously Coogan's performance, but then they said, but to watch The Reckoning, you come away depressed and unenlightened. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. And someone else has criticised it being on BBC, seeing as the BBC was the channel that hid him for so long. Now, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But Netflix have done a series about him. There's a YouTube series about it as well. Why shouldn't the BBC do it? The BBC, I think, are trying to show. I'm not standing up for the BBC here, by the way, but you know, if the BBC didn't do it, I'd have more of a problem.
It was essentially, in my opinion, it was essentially them holding their hands up, and if you remember, it includes some of the actual victims.
There's four victims.
Yeah, right at the end, one of the victims says, "Please don't ever let this happen again." And obviously, she was talking to the BBC, and you know, throughout the series, at the beginning, at the end, whatever, there would always be little bits of writing, you know, explaining certain things, but it was always surrounding the BBC. And I think that BBC were basically admitting their, you know, where they
culpability.
failed. Yeah.
To be honest,
and
I mean,
although,
I've done a little bit of research, and I'll try and use some clips on this if I can. But basically, his producer and the people high up, basically, because Savile was such a bullshitter, and because he exaggerated everything, any of these stories he heard, they thought were just exaggerations.
Jimmy Savile was really good at fooling people. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled the Vatican. He fooled the Honours Committee. He fooled Margaret Thatcher. He fooled the heir to the throne and his wife. And therefore, it's not surprising that he fooled a lot of BBC people, including me. And I think now, in retrospect, that he was probably getting a huge buzz out of the fact that he was doing these things and fooling everybody and achieving this great status at the same time.
In 1977, Savile won an award from Mary Whitehouse for wholesome family entertainment. He also appeared in not one, but 2 episodes of This Is Your Life. And we spoke about Jim Will Fix It. I mean, there's been some very strange guests on Jim Will Fix It.
Please, could you fix it for me to sing?
Here's somebody to help her who also has a problem with being shy. Gary Glitter. Impossible. How on earth can we get hold of that Mr. Rolf Harris? He's always flying all over the world. As soon as he knew that we needed him for Jim Will Fix It, here he came.
Yeah.
But just going back to what you were saying about the BBC, although I think that it was like an admission and a promise for it to never happen again and blah, 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 I did find it all a bit very, very stereotypical. Like, it wasn't, like, it was cliche. It was stereotypical. It didn't feel very, I don't know, what's the word? It felt just relying on stereotypes of people at the time and playing on that heavily. Like, instead of kind of maybe,
Explain what you mean.
So, like, when he's in meetings with BBC executives and they're all being very misogynistic, or they're being very blasé about serious allegations, and, you know, just silly things like, you know, even when he sees the alcohol on his desk, and he says, "Oh, when, you know," I can't remember what he said exactly, but they alluded to the fact that they start drinking after 12 and all this. It was just, it all felt like it relied on, they were very much relying on.
But it's probably a bit of truth to that. It's probably, you know, that's kind of why he got away with what he did, because there was these attitudes.
There is a truth to that, but I think they played on it a lot. Like, instead of, I mean, look, I don't know whether they've gone back and interviewed some of these people, or maybe some of them ain't even alive. I don't know, but surely there was more to it than just flippant kind of, you know, conversations like that. Like, it just felt like they were making excuses for themselves with that a little bit. Yeah. I don't know. I know that there's definitely, you know, what it was like back then will have a major impact on how things got dealt with and whatever. But I don't know. It felt too easy for them to just almost blame it on that in a way.
I mean, I mean, there's a couple of scenes in it that are just really hard to watch. You know, when the young cub goes into the room, the scene on the bed with the deceased woman.
I read something about that. So Steve Coogan actually refused to do it the way that they wanted him to do it. So apparently, you would have seen more of what he was doing underneath.
Yeah, I don't think you needed to see anything, did you? I think
no, he didn't need to. So
well, you wouldn't want to, and you don't need to. And to be honest, I think the way they filmed it, leaving it to your imagination, was actually the right call. I agree with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, him having to play Jimmy Savile is bad enough, but yeah, I agree with what he did. I mean,
did you know actually that he actually voiced the spitting image puppet of Jimmy Savile? Yeah, which is weird.
Marathon publicity. Run 26 miles in 2 hours. You'll have to be mad. Insanity. Trample.
And there's it's. I just think
the whole thing. Steve Coogan is known for his impressions, isn't he? So he's gone throughout his life doing a Jimmy Savile impression, and people laughing and find it funny or whatever. Now, obviously, the only way that he can use that impression is to legitimately play him in a series.
I did read somewhere that he's doing a Alan Partridge book, and they've cancelled the signings. Now, whether that's as a result of people, it's too soon after the thing airing. I would like to think people would recognise that the actor playing the guy is not the guy, but who knows? But
let's just spend a minute thinking about why this was made, because I'm still not 100% sure, because it's not obvious that it's any kind of message from the BBC. Yes, I do think there's an element of them wanting to admit their failures and promising for it to never happen again. But that's my interpretation. Like, it's not clear that that's the case. Like, that's my interpretation. And if you think about what was the reason this show was made? Is it to just show how brilliant of an actor Steve Coogan is?
No, I don't think it's that. I think from what I've heard, the reason that the people wanted to do the thing was to raise awareness. Now, I don't know if that. I think they raise awareness of it happening, but there's nothing you can do to stop it. You know what I mean? Because
that's why I think
there's probably Jimmy Savile characters currently running about now, getting away with stuff, and the reason they get away with it is because they're in positions of authority, or they manage. And there's been a number of sex cases. There's been Rolf Harris, there's been Gary Glitter. There's been numerous ones. And they didn't come out, did they? They managed to get away with it for a long time, and I'm sure there's currently things happening that are similar. So
yeah, I think I understand why that Guardian review said what it said. Didn't it say that it didn't feel enlightened? Well,
unenlightened, yeah. But I think
I didn't come away learning anything. I didn't come away learning anything new. I pretty much knew everything that.
But I think
if
we go back to the 70s, if a similar program would have aired in the 70s, and people were putting forward these allegations, then people would take note. But because it was a different era, he managed to get away with it. I think what they've done is they've made it so if people have allegations, they'll be listened to, whereas they weren't in the 70s.
Yeah, see, it all just seems a bit odd because, on one hand you're saying that, but the other hand, people like Russell Brand, you've got this documentary that come out 15 plus years later, making allegations of, similar sort of things. Not
similar. There was no underage stuff, but yeah.
No, not underage, but you know what I mean. It was in these within the BBC, Channel 4, and whatnot. But they waited this long.
Yeah, but I think the Russell Brand case is very different. You know, there's only 4, as far as I'm aware, there's only 4 allegations, and there's been no criminal charges. Now with Savile, there were hundreds. They actually think, I'm going back to my notes here, they think that he basically was offending probably from the 60s right through to, you know.
One thing I will say that I didn't know that he was, you know, if he was into, you know, messing around with dead bodies.
Yeah.
Was that something that was going around? Because I remember.
Well, he worked in the mortuary, didn't he, at Broadmoor? Was it Broadmoor, I think?
I remember him saying in the series that some football team were chanting that he'll basically, you know, F you in the morgue.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard of that. Yeah.
But that's one thing I didn't know. I just thought it was, you know, underage stuff, and not just underage stuff. It was just inappropriate touching, and
yeah,
you know.
I think one of the things that wasn't touched on was when after he died and when the allegations came out, there was a Newsnight program which was going to be exposing, and the BBC decided not to show that and instead ran a tribute. Yeah. That wasn't touched on, which I thought probably should have been. But the takeaway from it is, I think people have a fascination with stories like this. You know, we've had the Yorkshire Ripper. You know, people are drawn to stories. You know, the farmhouse murders, White House Farm, and all sort of stuff. You know, people are, I'm not going to say attractive, but people are interested, and the fact that it's true and it's real life. So I think it was well made. I don't want to say I enjoyed it because that's the wrong word, but you know,
That's the thing. I did enjoy it. That's what's worrying.
Yeah, I know what you
about
mean. It was a good piece of drama, but it also was shocking.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, hopefully people have enjoyed this. If you have, this is the Don't Get So Emotional podcast. I'm Paul. This is Tom. We are not experts. We're 2 guys with an opinion, okay? And please put your opinions in the chat. Tell us what you thought. Tell us whether we got it right, whether we got it wrong, whether you think it was a good thing to make. Tell us, just tell us your thoughts. And the most important thing, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Now, we plan to do some more of these, don't we? Weekly. It might not be weekly, but hopefully weekly chats about current breaking news, or not breaking news, current events, and just putting our take on it. And I think people will enjoy that. And that's it. What have you got anything else you want to say, Tom?
Yeah, I think just, although both of us clearly enjoyed watching it, he was a monster at the end of the day. And it is weird how everyone is so fascinated with true crime documentaries and serial killers, and even, to be honest, that Jeffrey Dahmer one that was out not too long ago, I couldn't even finish it because every time I watched it, it made me feel sick. But yeah, I think it's just important to, you know, let people know we're not weirdos. We're not weirdos. We enjoyed it, but I think, you know,
Well,
I enjoyed.
You know, true crime is, well, if you look on YouTube, true crime, it's just everywhere. And like I said, I think people are fascinated, not only because he got away with it for so long, but it's a true story. It's real. And I think, you know, we've got to think about the victims. We've got to think about the survivors. You know, I felt, you know, when I saw those 4 people talking, and then it had the clips of them on the TV show, and I thought they were just little kids. Do you know what I mean? So I think from that point, it was a good thing. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much, everyone, for clicking and watching the video. And we will catch you next week talking about what we're going to talk about next week. We don't know yet, do we?
I don't know yet.
Could be anything. Whatever it'll be, we hope you'll join us. And have a great week, everyone. All right, it's recording.
Whatever you want to bloody say, I don't really care. Hang on. Let me just attempt to try and make myself this camera a little bit more upright, which seems to happen. I swear on all that is holy, I'm going to break something in a minute.
We're going to be about 45 minutes and not even started.
Oh, mate. Oh, mate, it's because my desk is a mess and I don't want to just chuck it all over the place because it's stuff. My life. I'm going to punch something in a minute.
Right, we're going to start now, Tom. Otherwise, it's not going to start.
Right, hang on. All right, hang on.
Tom, before I forget, what's going on with the headgear? What's that?
Well, the hat?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just taking my fashion advice from Tim Paul.
Oh! Timcast. Maybe
I want to know what's under Tim Paul's hat.
We should call you Tom Paul.
Tom Paul.
Big fan of Tim Paul and the Timcast posse, and I'm sure he's glad to see you're following his beanie.
Yeah, I think we wear a hat for the same reason.
Oh, that's good. Ready?
Yeah.
So, Tom.
Let's start again, because you just started when I weren't even finished fiddling around.